Live from the vast Immersive Entertainment studios at Ideas World headquarters. Welcome to Ideas On. Hey, this week, what's beyond immersive entertainment? Uh, should be a good one to talk about. I know for a fact because I've read them. If you've looked at the blogs, you know there's a little bit of strong opinion about this one on our team. So just want to run through everybody. Say hi to Duncan Kennedy.
Hello.
And Jared Wells.
Bonjour.
And Olivia Allen.
Hi.
And I'm Bob. And this is Ideas On. So what's beyond immersive entertainment? Speed round, everybody. Just a quick overview. Where'd you go? Olivia, where'd you go this time?
I basically talked about how all good entertainment is immersive entertainment, and if it's not immersing you, you're probably doing your entertainment wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you'll hear some resonance there. Duncan, how about you?
I posited that the next evolution of immersive entertainment is going to be removing any semblance of distance or barriers or separation between the audience and the show, because the audience is part of the show. The audience actually helps to create the show, which makes it different every time, makes it unique, and the immersion is actually genuine as opposed to faux or fake in some way.
Cool. Jared?
I actually discussed the next evolution of immersive entertainment as not entertainment. It's something that goes beyond the realm of fantasy or theater and steps out into the real world to improve immersion in your own daily life, the things that you see on a daily basis, the things you experience on a daily basis in the community, in your house, wherever that is, something that makes your experience of your own true reality, not a created reality, a much more fulfilling and enriching one.
Cool. And I kind of resonated with all of your core points on mine. I take strong issue on this one and made it clear in the blog. I'll tell you right now, the whole term immersive entertainment is a term of trade that was invented by an industry that wanted to set itself apart and try to brand itself and turn it into something fancy. And I don't think it ever was. I don't think it is now. Kind of to where we started, to Olivia's starting point. And I cite this. If you were in the audience at Dionysus or in Athens, sometime after that brave fellow Thespis took that huge risk and spoke words to the audience for the first time, you were engaged in an immersive activity. You were placing yourself at the hands of a storyteller and willfully suspending disbelief and asking for permission to be in that world. So I really find it, frankly, a little bit arrogant of the themed entertainment business, to name it, to have co-opted this term immersive entertainment as its own, as it does, because look, it's there. The other side is, in referencing my background, I will tell you that immersion happens here. Immersion happens right here, and maybe I'll kick off a quick story about that, and then we can hear from everybody. We did a lot of work years ago, particularly with some pretty high stakes training for the military, among others, and these were critical, dangerous issues we were helping people learn how to deal with. And so there was a real press to say, hey, fidelity. We got to raise the bar. We got to have all the whistles and bells. It's got to smell like they're there. It's got to feel like they're there. And, we were in a dialogue with the Marine Corps at one point, and these guys were great. And they said, yeah, we'd love to do that, but, we just don't have the budget. And what we said was, sir, I'll tell you what, if you'll just let us have some Marines and put them in a dark room with earphones on, believe me, they'll sweat, they'll do all the things they would in the environment you want us to simulate, because we're going to use this simulator. We're going to use this immersive entertainment device to really bring the audience, into the tale. So that's, I feel pretty strongly about that. So where'd you guys want to go? Olivia, you had some really good clarity about it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so if you think about all sorts of entertainment, and I'm just going to preface this with, I don't know anything about theme parks. I don't even go to one, really, other than the fact that they put you in a place and you go on rides. I grew up going to them, but I don't know much about the business of theme parks, so I'm not going to talk about it. But if you think about all sorts of entertainment, um, but theater is a really wide term. So live theater, radio slash podcasts slash audiobooks, um, art, weird museums, stuff like that, Meow Wolf Place, books, any type of entertainment. The goal is to take you, the person, and mess with your brain so that you are put in a different place for a certain amount of time to be told a story and go live in a different world for a little while. And there's the whole thing of the agreement to suspend disbelief for a bit, even if it's a piece of nonfiction. You're not living it right now. You're not living that biography. Um, but you are being immersed in it because that's the goal. that's that's the goal of good entertainment. If
Of all of it,
if
yeah.
you're not, yeah, if that's not happening, then you're not doing your job as an entertainer.
Okay, so I think we all fundamentally agree on most of those premises. So let's get back to where we were focused. Is, okay, whatever it is, if it's everything, great. What's next? Is where so. What, guys, where did you take that one? What did you guys pose as a form factor, if you will, for where this evolves?
I'm of the opinion that I think that entertainment, the need to escape reality, and the need to experience fantasy is something that humans will continue to do no matter how good life gets. But I think that when you look at and I'm sticking within the traditional term of immersive entertainment here. If you look at something like a theme park, or you look at even a virtual reality or a video game, where so much effort and thinking has been poured into programming that environment to tell a certain story or to put you in a certain place. Obviously, again, it's programmed, so there's a little bit of there's certainly some fantasy to that in the real world, but I think the same sort of process, its next evolution, has to go outside of that realm and really impact a person on a day-to-day life. And I'm fortunate that I live in a place where I think that that's been executed on a very good, on a very well done level. I live in Celebration. And it is a town founded in that whole new urbanist idea of making it a very walkable community. And of course, as a place where you live a place where you live is supposed to support the functions of living, going to work, getting your food, whatever you have to do to survive. But one thing I've enjoyed living here is that, rather than just taking the sidewalks and walking up and down the streets, we've got this whole lovely area of boardwalks that take you back into the nature of the place. And they're just as quick, they're just as efficient as taking the sidewalk, but they immerse you into more of the story of the place. You walk through nature throughout the seasons, you see it change, you see the animals there, so there are some new characters that you're introduced to as you live in this place and you watch them grow up. I think that taking the same idea that, you don't have to program an environment to tell the story. Stories are all around us. And I think that if you apply the same sort of thinking to something in the community or something in the home. The example I used was cave paintings as the first form of immersive entertainment. These are our ancient ancestors, they lived in these very austere rock caves. And what did they do? They decided to put up some of the stories, some of the lessons in artistic form on the wall to inform them as their day went on. It wasn't just for artistic purposes. It reminded you before you go out hunting, hey, don't mess with the front end of the mastodon. That's not going to end well for you. So those sort of things, whatever they are in the future, I think they will not be in the realm of fantasy or the need or necessarily creating escapism. The next evolution of immersive entertainment is making us more immersed in the joy of life that surrounds us on a daily basis.
Duncan, what do you think
That's extremely interesting to me. I haven't been to Celebration in years, but if I understand you right, you're saying that Celebration has been structured in such a way that there are more opportunities to see nature and animals.
Yes, I would, and they are. what I called in the blog, they were called I think I called them life immersions or something like that. They're not entertainment in the sense that they require you to go to a place and devote time to to experience them. They sort of undergird the daily functions of your life. They just make them more pleasant. They make them more visceral. They make them more immersive. So in Celebration, if you take the boardwalks to go to the center of town, it's faster. It's just as fast, if not faster, than taking the sidewalks. But it's a lot more pleasant of an experience, and you're seeing more of the story of your community unfold before you than you would just walking by the buildings with your earphones in and seeing the cars go by. It exposes you to a different side, and it gives you different routes to take. And also, as a member of the community, kind of a rite of passage, just learning your way around those things. It's not necessarily intuitive the first time you do it, but you become more a part of the community as you explore those trails, and they become part of your daily commute into town to get lunch, or school kids walking to their schools, or whatever the case may be. It just makes the ultimate experience of living in your own reality a more pleasant and fulfilling thing.
So it's like a branded community, kind of. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I live in Boulder, so it's super interesting to me because that kind of happens here without anybody trying.
Yeah.
You just go outside and there's a mountain and it's like, holy shit. Um,
And what's more immersive than that?
yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting.
So Duncan, we spent a lot of time, talking this week actually about show sheets and working on all these parks. Thoughts about what's that next form factor in your head? How do we kick that up a notch?
Well, it's not a decimal point on the park development budget, so we're not talking $100 million theme park attractions. It's just the opposite. It's more in the line of what's already emerging now in cosplay or steampunk or even murder mystery dinner theater. So that we are eliminating the notion of separation between audience and performer, and instead we are inviting everyone to partake in an exchange. Now, if that exchange is based in a certain story envelope that is attractive to the guest before they enter the story and enter the experience and participate in that, great. It may be just as simple as the old days where you put a flashlight under your chin and you're telling a story around the campfire. There's no special effects, there's no VR goggles, but your audience is just immersed in that story because they are trapped inside the vulnerability of that setting around the campfire where they have no idea what is off in the darkness and behind them. So they are part of that story. In the same way, we can create experiences that are either based on a story envelope or a story arc, or are based on a certain destination or a theme or aesthetic, whatever it might be, like I mentioned, steampunk or, Comic-Con type cosplay, where you aren't a performer performing for somebody else where they are, vicariously sitting back and watching the show. Instead, you are actually in the story. You are participating in the recreation, like a Civil War reenactor, where, if the entire audience watching the reenactment was in the reenactment instead of off on the periphery, I believe that's where we're headed in terms of what the next iteration of immersive entertainment is. And it doesn't require a lot of technology. The worst thing you can do is strap on a big headset and fake goggles. No, you want to be real, visceral, palpable, tactile in that experience. And it's going to basically establish some new rules in terms of how do we get people to interact on that level and not burst the bubble, so to speak, so that we can all, enjoy that moment where we are, uniquely, conversing in the same story.
Yeah, I think I go there too. I mean, the idea of losing the fourth wall, right? Or forget the traditional theatrical walls. We have a three-dimensional space, and we're all in it.
Yep.
And whether you know the script or you don't, and where you are in the story, and what role you play, even if you're not aware of it. And we've all seen great examples of this. I mean, a good straight up early one was Livy and I saw once on Broadway or off Broadway a couple times.
Yeah.
Just a fabulous pre-show event where you'd walk in the house and there was a pub on stage, and it was a pub, and the audience was up there, and you could order a beer and you could hang out. And then very subtly at a certain point, a stage manager who was clearly a stage manager because she had on a headset and a belt pack sort of didn't elbow, but sort of moseyed out, and folks begin to drift out of the pub and down into the house. And then all of a sudden, the fourth wall was back, and we realized that's the set, and those people we thought were hanging out with us are actually the actors.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, and there's a million ways to think about it. Meow Wolf is another fabulous one. I mean, can't get enough of that. So that's the space dimension. The other thing I like to play with in the next form is the time dimension. So how do we engage an audience? If you think about what we call the show, right? Whether that's in the park or in the theater, how do we engage an audience before the show, connect that engagement to the show, and continue to stay with them after the show? So, one thing we kicked around a while back that I still think is a good idea is this notion of, if you thought of a museum experience or a theatrical experience or a theme park experience, any of those are good examples. If we tied that to a game, so we're in story, we're in the world of the game, and we're playing the game. And in a game, you are a participant, and we're doing what we do, and we're racking up scores. And then there's a point where there's a place you can go physically. Now, you've been playing through time. Now you can go physically. And as I said in the blog, you show up, and there is an actual dragon, and you actually have to fight this dragon or whatever the moment is. That recurses back into the game, raises your game level. The game also enabled you to know how to engage the experience better. To me, that's a spiral model. And we could effectively, as good storytellers, as good designers, we could effectively establish an almost infinite relationship with an audience and stay in story together for a long, long time. So that appeals to me. It sounds like a lot of fun to me.
I think gamification in immersive entertainment, I think that is definitely a next step there. I mean, if you take a look at what they've done in Galaxy's Edge, they've turned your phone into your Star Wars interactor. I mean, as you go around through the park, there are these little tasks that you can get from the junk dealer who wants you to go talk to this guy who owes him some money, and you do it all through your phone. And I love the idea of extending it beyond that. I think that's great. But I think that it's in many environments, mobile devices and things like that take people out of an experience. But I think when you look at immersive entertainment, it has the opportunity to really bring them in to experiences in new ways.
Yeah, that makes me think too, Duncan, about our old pal Ken Ingram and what he would do with interactors, And one thing Ken would do as a producer is he would I'm going to use the word stage because I don't know, but he would stage these things in the middle of the real world. And the participant would sign up for this, but not know what was going to happen. And then people would show up, think this person's going about their normal life in their normal town, and people would show up, say, "Come with me," and they didn't know where it was going. It involved a lot of trust, right? You really had to trust that this wasn't some nutty guy who was going to run out and steal your car. But those kinds of things done well, done without, huh?
I don't know if I trust that.
I don't know either, but it's a great experiment, and he had a lot of experience with it. But within a boundary that says it's safe, those kinds of things where you're not quite sure, even on stage, backstage, one of the things when we were doing the original studio tour park for Disney, one of the things Frank Wells said one time in an interview, and I thought it was just a perfect way to describe it. He said, "Look, this is the one Disney park, the first Disney park, where we are intentionally trying to blur the lines between onstage and backstage. We actually want the guest to wander into a place and say, wait a minute, am I supposed to be here? This looks like they're shooting a movie,
Right.
And blurring that line was the whole intention of that park. So to me, that's where the fun is next, really. However we figure out physically how to do it.
I would agree. And I also think it's interesting because there certainly is, particularly for a park like Studios where, it's a studio, having the concept, coming up with park concepts that are in and of themselves. I guess kind of zoos sort of remind me of that, because when you go to a zoo, you of course are there to experience the animals, you're there to experience the habitats they live in and what they do, but you also are there to experience the care that they get and to see what it goes into taking care of an animal and what that's all about. Yeah,
it reminds me of the plot of you guys remember the movie Last Starfighter?
Yep.
So if you don't, the quick synopsis of the plot is there's a game. It's an old school pinball machine kind of game almost, and
arcade game, with joystick.
An arcade game with joysticks, out of the way place. This kid's playing it, and it's called The Last Starfighter, and he's playing the game, And as it evolves, it turns out it's actually a recruiting device for this unseen intergalactic force, and the kid gets recruited to really go into space and really, yeah, it's the same premise as Ender's Game.
I was going to say like Ender's Game, but not as dark.
Yeah, it's exactly like Ender's Game. You know, well, look, I'd like to wrap up with a question. And this is something we didn't talk about it, but I love it. Let's go around the table. The best example from your own life of the most immersed you've ever been in what you would classify an entertainment environment. I mean, I can go. For me, it was theater, and it was actually fairly recent. And I'm going to forget the name of the play. Play about kid who's kind of a nerd in high school and has a difficult.
Oh, Dear Evan Hansen.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So
Great play.
that show twisted me around in my head to the point that I had to physically sit in the house for 20 minutes after the show was over, after the audience had gone, to reset my gyros. I was so pulled into it, and frankly, it was emotionally. And that show was set not in my time. Something about that, and it was everything. It was the set design, it was the tech, it was the performance, it was the music. It was done so skillfully that it pulled me down a rabbit hole into a vortex that I had to work to get back out of. So, yeah, Evan Hansen a couple of years ago, that was it for me. Who else?
I've got one. Well, I've got a lot actually, but most recently probably, and it wasn't even in a physical place. It was a recording, but and not like a streaming or anything. It was a recording from who knows when they did it. But the play Indecent by Sarah Rule. It's really intense, but it's really good if you want to watch it. And it fucked me up, man. It was a lot. It was a lot on a very personal level. It was a lot.
Okay. Interesting. Jared, how about you? One come to mind?
The most immersive experience or just entertainment?
Oh, just that time when you felt most immersed, and
I gotta say, probably the most immersive experience I've ever had was going to see Tony Bennett in concert. Funny enough, it was just him. It was just him and a jazz trio, and the trio was kind of in the back, and he was up in the spotlight. And it was an old theater. It was like from the 1940s. So and as he was singing these songs and sharing the stories about the conversation he had with Ira Gershwin and Cole Porter and all these great old geniuses of song. I mean, the hundreds of other people in the theater, they just disappeared, and it felt like literally I was sitting on the steps in the stage. I was in the rear balcony, but it felt like I was sitting up there on the edge of the steps, just listening to the guy tell stories. And there wasn't any fancy tricks involved. It was just his gestalt as a performer that was able to transport me back to those, what I imagined it must have been like to sing at the Paramount in 1943 or something.
Very cool. Duncan, how about you?
Well, you mentioned Ken Ingram, so it would be the first time I ever saw what he and Jeff Worth were doing for iPlay for the interactive performance at UCF, University of Central Florida. And me and a friend were actually invited to come and attend the closing scene, which was set up as a party at this mover and shaker's house, who was one of the faculty at the university who had allowed them with the production to use his house and host this party, which would then transition to the wrap party of the entire production that had been going on for the last 2 days. And so we showed up. We were told to wear a coat and tie like it was a cocktail party. We showed up. We got a drink. We're hanging out, kind of not sure what's going on. Stage manager comes in, tells us very quickly what's been happening in the last 18 hours or so of the journey of this one person who was a reporter for a local newspaper who had agreed to, participate in this, and in doing so, would then write an article about the experience. And so we get a cue that they're on their way. The production people come in. Some cameras had been set up, little remote cameras, just because they were documenting as well. But these are all, very in the background. You didn't notice them. And so suddenly this guy rushes into the house, crashes the party. We all react like, what's going on? There's Ken was actually playing the bad guy, the villain, if you will. And so they have this dramatic, stare down and conclusion of what's going on. There's a heroine who steps into the story, and we're sort of all suddenly background people watching this play out, like you would, watching a movie where the hero and the villain finally go out in a public setting, and you see all these people in the background stopping whatever they're doing, watch what's going on. That's what we were doing, and suddenly we were in the midst of this story, and I went from being curious about what is this production concept they're doing to an invited guest into somebody's home to suddenly being at a cocktail party where this weird fight suddenly broke out, and suddenly I'm paying attention to what's going on because I'm a witness to a crime here. And it was just very transformative for me. Immediately afterwards, I'm asking Ken a million questions, and Jeff Worth, how do I get involved? What is this all about? Please show me more. And so, very big fan of what Ken's still doing in Orlando, Jeff Worth out in California, and then in Texas. They're really pushing the envelope on this, and very excited. As far as a reference, I would suggest people look up. There's a place in Utah called Evermore. It's a park, and as opposed to it being a theme park with rides, it's an experiential village where you come in as one of the villagers and you join in on whatever the village is doing that day, and it's very
Dungeons and Dragons in real life. It's
exactly.
That sounds so fun.
Yep.
Yeah, we should all do a field trip, and
yes, please.
And by the way, we mentioned it. We'll say it again. If anybody gets a chance to see Meow Wolf in Santa Fe or the new Omega Mart installation in Vegas,
yep.
If you're interested in things like this, absolutely super job they did. Look, here's where it sounds like we ended up to me. It's like we all sort of agreed. More Samuel Coleridge, who came up with the willing suspension of disbelief in the 18th. Probably less of this goggle stuff. I mean,
if it needs hardware, it's just going to be hard.
Yeah, it's a gag, but that's not how it happens. It happens up here.
Yep.
Well, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. This is Ideas On. We would love to hear from you. Please comment on our blog page, if you will. You obviously found us on YouTube, or you found us at podcast. So wherever you found us, share this with your friends. We'd like to hear from them too. And we'll be around. We got more coming. Thanks, everybody.